Welcome back to another episode of Aftermath with Scott Brown and Ross Paget. And guess what? I'm the second part of that. I am so happy to be talking to the guru of currency. Today's topics and questions are, I have to ask Scott, let's say, hypothetically speaking, a wad of cash walks up to a genie lamp, rubs it, and its first wish is, what kind of person am I? That's a weird question, but I want to know what kind of personality money would have if it ever became sentient. How about this for another question? If 100 people was given 10 grand, which one is the best one to be out of that 100 people? Is it the 75th? Is it the 82nd? If you go for the top spot, you probably have a lot more at risk. What's the perfect number out of that 100 people that we should be striving for? And lastly, I always hear everyone say invest for the long term, but we are humans and we are finite, so there has to be a time in someone's life where that's bad advice, right? And much, much more on today's episode on Aftermath. Get ready, because here comes some money talk. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Always awesome. I know we've got some weird questions on today's episode.
I'm still trying to process the genie and the cash question.
I trusted my gut on that one.
Yeah.
And just like traditions on this podcast, there's going to be some swings and misses on my end.
So, I think it's fair if cash had a personality.
How's that for a question? I'm obsessed with this question. If money became a human being, what kind of human would that be? What kind of person would that look like? Or is it just a mirror?
Oh.
I don't know. That sounded right to say.
That's well played. So I think maybe you're right. I think maybe cash would be a mimic. Cash would a
shapeshifter.
A shapeshifter, depending on who it engaged with. It would change appearance if it showed up to your house as opposed to my house.
It would be the thing.
It would.
Jim Carrey's mask.
Exactly. Yes. I think that cash would be, again, I think shapeshifter is the best, because if it shows up at a 19-year-old frat boy's house, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to look different on a Friday night to that frat boy than if it shows up as 73-year-old at the long-term care facility. It's going to have two different appearances. On the 73-year-old is going to see a little bit of bingo money, and the 19-year-old frat boy is going to see a whole bunch of 12 packs. So it can change form depending on who it's in front of.
What's funny is that if it's a shapeshifter, what also shapeshifts is water. And what liquid cash. It's all connected.
Accidental? I don't think so.
I don't think so at all. I don't know. I just think it's almost like a magnifier. Well, what's the saying that alcohol is if you're a good person, you just kind of become more lovey, but if you're a bad person, you just become kind of more of an asshole.
Belligerent. Yes.
Yeah. And do you agree with that assessment
100%.
that money and alcohol are exaggerators of people's personality?
Yeah, if you're a generous, kind person and you get a large amount of money, whether it be slowly or quickly, you're gonna be just as generous or more so. You're going to do more good. I've seen this repeated hundreds, if not thousands of times, where if you're kind of, to use your term, an asshole, and you get a large sum of money, that's not going to change for you. You're just going to have more ability to share that with people. That feature of your personality. You're going to be that person that talks about, walks around with their Ferrari jacket on, or leads every handshake with the Rolex out in front. You're going to be that person, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas a person who's humble, has some humility, they're going to quietly do good in the community. They're going to quietly give money for scholarship. They're going to quietly give money to their church. They're going to quietly try to feed the homeless. They're going to quietly try to help their employees. So yes, I think that, like alcohol, that it is a magnifier of somebody's personality traits. I don't think it changes. We all know examples of people with lots of money who are entirely tyrannical assholes, and we also know people with money who spend most of their lives trying to do good with
And
it.
heads up, though, unlike alcohol, you can drive with a lot of money.
Yes, you can. You are allowed to drive under the influence of cash.
You can go
Do
ahead.
not do the other, please.
Yeah. You can drive loaded with your wallet.
Yes.
But you can't drive loaded.
Not loaded with Jim Beam.
You can't do that. That's
two different things.
Very, very illegal.
It's critical advice.
One of the feel-good stories that I ran across this past week talking about good people do good things with their money is, and I'm not the biggest Big Bang Theory fan on the planet, but I saw this story and I was like, man, that is probably one of the coolest and nicest things I've ever heard a human ever do with their funds. He goes on GoFundMe late at night and just fulfills people's hospital bills.
This is which person?
He is, oh man, this is gonna sound the Indian dude.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know their names.
I don't know any of their names either. But yeah,
I'm not even going to take a stab because then that's probably going to be inflammatory. The not white one.
Yeah,
Sorry, my
bad. It's all right. I think he knows.
Yeah, but it's now it's so disrespectful as I'm complimenting him, but I forgot his name. But he just goes out on GoFundMe and he gets his little digital Batman on.
Yeah,
as he just fulfills GoFundMe.
Well, it's like, Bill Murray's notorious for showing up and paying bar tabs. Just walking into a bar in Charleston and buying everybody a drink and then leaving. It's cliche, but I would say that holds true. I don't think I've ever seen somebody get money and then change. Like suddenly they were a kind person and then they weren't, or they were an unkind person and suddenly they became kind. I don't know that I've ever encountered that.
It's somewhat of a follow-up question because we're kind of starting off today's episode not really with black and white numbers, but more so with more hippy-dippy thoughts, I think, on this episode is the gasoline it takes to go ahead and pursue things in your career, in your life, to go ahead and maybe get that extra dollar or that extra $5,000, $10,000 in a year. How do you not have that be a detriment to it almost seems like to obtain higher amounts of money, you also, there's a cost and a sacrifice.
Sure.
How do you walk the balance of that sacrifice and with that black and white number? I know that's not even financial advising. That's more of a therapist question, but I would think you and your clients run into that all the time of I'm burning at both ends. I'm making money, but I am not happy.
Oh, there's no doubt. I don't even have to go any further than my own team, right? Or myself for that matter.
This question is also hyper personal. If you can't tell, let me just spoon feed that because this is something that I struggle with. Is that I want more? I want to keep going. I want that, and next thing I know, I am in my office 2 a.m. with my hands in my head, going like, "Am I even doing this right? Or is this sacrifice even worth trying to save as much money as I possibly can?"
And I don't. So I think we're having an existential conversation now, right? Which is totally cool with me, as everybody knows. So I think one of the things. In fact, Nick and I were talking just before we set up today is. The utility of money, right? Is I have clients, and I'll try to meander my way back to your question, but I have clients who, let's say they have $3 million. They're 73 years old, 75 years old, and they grow frustrated because their $3 million hasn't turned into $4 million in the amount of time they would like it to. And when I ask them why do you even care if it's $4 million, right? Which is an odd thing to be asked by your money manager. But why do you want it to be $4 million? And the answer is, I just do, right? And if that's your answer, that's probably the wrong answer, because if you're 74 years old, we know from studies that 65 to 75 are kind of the key years of health, where health is good enough and money is good enough typically to enjoy life, do the things you've always wanted to do, take that trip to Europe, take the cruise around the world, hike the Appalachian Trail, whatever it is. we know those are the years. And if you're trying to go from 3 million to 4 million at 80, there's no utility in that. You're not spending. I can't even get you to spend, the 150,000 a year that we're producing on the 3 million you already got, hypothetically at 5%, right? You didn't spend it last year, right? So I have a lot of these conversations, and well, if we were just a little more aggressive, maybe we could get 9% instead of 8%. I'm like, why? Why are we doing this, right? And the answer is they don't know. That's, in our culture, American culture, we're driven to be driven. And I'm not saying that's wrong. In fact, in a lot of ways, that's good. It's gotten our country to where it is today, or at least where it was a few years ago. Today's a little sloppy. But the reality is that most people are driven to a number, whether that's another $5,000 in income or another $30,000 in their 401k or whatever it is. And I'm not saying you shouldn't understand success. What I am saying is understand why your success is what it is. Because if success is a number, you say, I want to have $1 million, but you have beyond that, you don't know. Well, you just know you want $1 million.
Yeah, well, that's what everyone wants.
Okay, but what if you needed $2 million? Or what if you only needed $500,000, right? If we don't know the answers to those questions, we let's say you're a person who enjoys a good movie, you love a good book, and I have lots of clients in this category who would much rather sit down and read a good book on their back porch, listening to birds chirp, than go to Europe twice a year. They would much rather do the first thing, right? Now, that person may say they need $1 million, and the Europe person may say they need $1 million, but the reality is, first person doesn't need $1 million. They might need $500,000. They're buying books. They're buying bird feed, right? So
the books aren't made with diamonds.
So let's hope not. So when you say what's worth it, what's not worth it, what am I giving up? In your case, you have a young child at home, and maybe you're weighing, do I want to work a little more? I might make more money if I worked out of town a few days a week, right? And you say, but then I sacrifice time with my young son, right? What you have to do that math. Nobody else can do that for you. I personally worked a lot of hours for the first decade or two of my career. I probably worked on average 14, 15 hours a day. Now, a lot of those hours were at home, planning, plotting, doing finances, running portfolios, whatever I was doing.
Maybe the office is on in the background.
Exactly, right. Seinfeld was going, whatever it was. But I was telling Nick that I coached Little League for 7 years. I would pick up my son at 4 from school. I would drive to practice. I would practice for 2.5 hours. I'd take him home so mom could feed him, put him to bed, and I would go back to work. To me, I wanted both, so I put in the extra time to have both. For some people, they may not. They may have wanted to sit at the table with my son for those 7 years, right? And I did sometimes, but I coached the Little League. That was my quality time with him, and usually I was there in the morning when he got up. But there were times where my wife fed him and put him to bed, and I didn't see that. It wasn't every time, but it was sometimes. So I said, there's a trade-off, right? I want to have financial success. I want to have business success. That's kind of my selfish interest because my family didn't care.
Well, but they also get the benefit of it.
They do. They do get the benefit of those hours and that time. And that's how I did the math. I'm like, okay, if I live this life, I'm going to make this much money and we won't be able to do these things. But if I live this life, I'm going to have a little less time up front, but maybe a little more time on the back end with my grandkids, yada, yada, yada. So again, is there a specific answer to the question, how much effort do you or sacrifice do you make to get to some dollar figure, whether that be an income or that be an actual liquid wealth? Unfortunately, that's an individual thing. And that's really a matter of priorities and lifestyle. And I'm telling you, a lot of people who think they need millions of dollars really don't. And the problem is that as a society, we're telling people you need $1 million. The new number's 20 million. 10 reasons why you need 3 million. I mean, we're suckers for all this, right? If you haven't sat down with an advisor or just simply with a yellow pad and said, I think I need $78,000 in retirement. I'm 29 years old. How do I get there? You will probably be shocked at how little sacrifice you have to. You have to make some, but you'll probably be shocked at how little sacrifice you have to make to get to that utility of money.
I know that these were weird questions, but I have a hard time thinking that this wasn't some of the most important conversation we've had on this podcast, because a lot of people they look at the black and white numbers of it all, but there's also the human side.
Yeah.
And the hardest question that I have ever heard is, what do you want?
Yeah.
And it's worth, if you are still confused on the answer, I think what Scott is saying and what now I am also saying is the answer to that question is worth finding out. There should be self-reflecting. You should know or have a good of an idea as possible of what you want out of your time here. Do you want those times with the grandchildren on the back end, or do you want the sacrifice now with the hope and thought that there's financial freedom later? I could keep going on, but
please do. I mean, I love the topic because I think too many people, especially with social media now, it's just, you're just hammered with ridiculousness, and you need this, or 10 things you got to have before you retire. This is how the 10 ways to live your life. And I mean, seriously?
And people also fall into the trap of, well, people get affected by that, but that's not me.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And this is what I would like to remind everyone. Advertisements is a multi-billion-dollar industry, not because it doesn't work.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's quite effective.
In fact, advertising has grown to be the most accurate it's ever been right now as I speak in human history.
And I think, again, maybe even at least equal to that, I think, is the circle you travel in. If you hang around people who are constantly... Sure. We just had this conversation. We were talking about a favorite comedian of mine who I won't mention, but, his comment was, you know what stupid people understand? And the answer is everything. Stupid people understand everything, right? So I think that you have to step back even from your peer group and say, do I hang around these people who appear anyway to want these things? Should I also want those things? I'll use myself as an example. When I was younger, I was very social. Like, I just thought my friends all went to parties. People always got dressed up and got excited to go to parties. So I thought, well, I'm a socialite. I have to go to parties. I love parties. The reality is I can't stand parties. I learned later in life. I'm like, I don't like parties. Too many people. I'm having a 30-second conversation over there, and then I'm getting a beanie weenie of some kind over there.
I don't know what the ABV is on the punch.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm freaking out.
What's a croquette or whatever those things are called? I don't like big groups of interaction because I don't feel they're not meaningful to me. It's very superficial. Anyway, the short of it is I learned about myself after I kind of pulled myself aside from my peer group, is that I like nothing more than to have dinner with another couple or 2 or 3 couples where I can have a deep, meaningful conversation with somebody rather than how's the weather, how are the kids, what were your vacation plans? That's fine, but it doesn't really do much for me. Point being is that's true of money as well. The people you hang around are going to have a collective group of values, and sometimes you have to step back for a second and say, well, I know that guy says he's got to get 5 million. And then you think, well, I got to get 5 million. How can I let that guy get 5 million when I don't have 5 million?
It's
right?
that guy.
Right. You don't want to keep behind that guy. Nobody even likes that guy.
No one likes Chad.
Right. Exactly.
Sorry if your name is Chad.
Sorry, other Chads.
You got wrapped up in that.
So, again, pulling yourself away from social media and 10 things you got to do tomorrow. It's just ludicrous that we even have these things and people pay attention to them, and pulling yourself away from your peer group for a second to say, do I really want what Chad wants? And the answer is probably no.
Let's say there's 100 people that walk into a room.
Mm-hmm.
They all have the same financial status.
Mm-hmm.
They all have the $20,000 in their savings as a safety, as a safety net for anything to happen. But they all at the same time, their grandparent died, and boom, they were all given 100 dead grandparents, $100,000.
Bad day for grandparents.
A bad day to be a grandpa.
Right.
But for this hypothetical, they all are given 10 grand. You have first place, who's made the most money and done the best with that extra $10,000. And you have 100th place, who they've lost it all. Or you know what? 100th place, they've just left it at $1,000. They just left it in a checking account. They never saved it.
Okay.
Or they never spent it.
Right.
which one should we strive to be realistically?
The first place or last place?
Not first place, last place, because the first place guy also finished first because of the riskier bets that he took.
I follow you.
I would say maybe
I follow
15 out of the 100 people kind of did the same thing as the first place guy did, but it didn't work out. They fell back into the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
You see where
which
I'm
is
going
what
with?
would happen. Yeah.
Which is what would happen. So what number out of that 100 people, given the 10 grand, should we get a little bit more cozier to? Because I've come to grips with understanding that first place guy who turned 10 grand into 100,000, it's a minority.
Yeah.
It's unreasonable to expect that in my own future, because you can look at it objectively as chance, because there's 15 other people who did the same thing and it didn't work out.
Yeah, it's a probability equation, right? I mean, I think this is one of the things I try to tell clients is what is the probability of success, right? There's a term called ergonomics, and ergonomics is the study of survivability. And how we use it in investing is to say, if you make an investment and the consequence of being wrong is you're broke, that's not highly ergonomic, right? That means that you either win or you completely lose. You really win, you 10x your money like the first guy probably did, or you lose all of your money. That's not ergonomic. If you make an investment with 80% of the money that you could lose all the money, but you keep 20% in a savings account, it becomes more survivable or ergonomic, right? You're dealing in probabilities. And I think what you're saying is person number one who, let's say, hypothetically turned 10 grand into 100 grand, that person definitely took a low probability course. They said, I'm going to put all the money in this. And, it's probably going to blow up, but I'm willing to take the chances. 10 grand I didn't have to begin with, so I'm cool with that. And they got lucky, right? Then the person number 2 through 50 saw that and tried to buy the same thing. The problem was the opportunity had already passed, right?
Wow.
Because they said, well, he did well, so there's a bias there, right? You say, well, that worked, therefore it will work, but that's not how the world works, right?
Man, people don't know that enough.
Not enough.
Is that like people want to do what that other person did, but what that person actually just did was make their own lane.
They made their own lane and the lane's closed behind them.
Yeah.
Right. That opportunity's
it's
gone.
their lane.
Right. Because you can say, well, I know a guy who bought Bitcoin at, $100 and now it's 90 grand, right?
Not a bad deal.
Not a bad deal. I mean, how could that go wrong? He did it. So now I'm going to buy it at,
90 grand.
90 grand and it'll go to, 200 grand. It doesn't work that way, right? He was lucky. I'm not saying maybe if this guy's some kind of crypto expert, which I'm not sure is really a thing, but let's pretend it is. And he turned his $100 into 90 grand. Cool. But you have to accept the fact that ship has sailed. That fish has been caught, right? You have to move to a different hole.
You got to go find a new fish.
Find some more fish, right? So what I would say to you is if you look at the big scheme of things, we know statistically if we gave everybody in the world an equal amount of money. Everybody got $1 million. Everybody in the world, right? In 5 years, the same 5,000 people would have all the money again because that's human nature, right? There's a group of people who understand the game. They understand probabilities. It's like playing poker, right? They know they're sitting most people, they're sitting at a table and they're playing 5-card draw or stud or whatever it is, and they know that they got to draw a red king, right? And they see the other red king in another person's hand and they think, well, I still like my odds, right?
Yeah.
No, your odds are terrible. Just count the damn cards, right? But they're convinced that because, they need that red king for the royal flush, that's clearly going to happen, right? So people, they just don't do probabilities well. They overthink everything, and the biases of what has happened gets in the way of what will happen.
And that first place person gets a lot of the attention. But
for sure.
And then I'll try to go back, circling back to the question, is it okay to warm up with the idea of being 40th? Being
sure.
35th?
Well, is that success, right? If let's say the number one guy made 100 grand, right? the number 50 guy made 20 grand or 25 grand. He still doubled his money, right? So let's say he took considerably less, whatever path he took was not wrought with you're going to either fail completely or win completely. It was the downside is you might lose 10 or 15%. The upside is you might make 30 or 40% a year, right? Okay, the probabilities have improved for that person. So for me as an investor, just Scott Brown, forget that I'm an advisor, but as an investor, I am always looking at the probabilities of success over time. And I don't ever do anything, not one single thing that has any probability beyond a meteor landing on the planet of me not having at least getting my money back or something close to it. I won't do it. I don't need to do it. I'm taking a risk I don't need to take to get something I don't need. So when you're taking when you say success, turning 10 grand into 20 grand over a 5 or 10 year period is success, why are you risking losing the whole 10 grand? Right? You don't need to do that. This all comes back to the same thing. What are you trying to accomplish? What is the probability of success in any given 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 year period of time? The first guy had a low probability, thus he got a high reward because he got lucky. The reason we hear about lottery winners is because it never happens. Yeah. It's millions of people play the lottery every day. There's no TV crew showing up to the guy who lost for the 1,000th time in a row.
There's a perfect quote from a comedian named Bo Burnham, who's on a late night talk show, and he's basically reinforcing this sentiment of going that I can't give you advice. I don't take advice from me. That's like walking up to a lottery winner and then having seen them win and then having them tell you like put all your money in scratch offs. Yeah, that's just not. I'm not the person to be looking up to. So here's the question though: is that who out of those 100 people, if you have someone who walks into your office that you are shooting for, I guess, because I would like to think that if a client walks in, you're not necessarily you're thinking ergonomics.
Yeah. I'm thinking survive. This is the problem, that people come into an advisor's office with kind of a lottery mentality. They come in and they may interview 5 advisors, and a lot of people will give their money to the one who tells them the best story. And meaning,
I hit grand slams.
The upside is way higher than the first 4 people I talk to, so why wouldn't I give it to that person? But that's not ergonomic. That's not, the probabilities are, if you walk into a financial advisor's office and they say, look, historically the S&P 500 earns 7.5% to 8% annually. We'll probably have some years that are considerably higher and a few years that are considerably lower, but we're still going to average 7 to 8 percent. Oh, you don't really like a lot of risk, so maybe we have to add a few bonds, so maybe you earn 6%. You'll double your money every 10 or 11 years. And they hear that and they yawn, and then they go to the next person and they hear it again. Because these are responsible advisors. Our job as advisors are not to make people rich, it's to keep them from being poor.
Can you say that again for the people in the back?
Yeah. So our job as advisors that's not our job. I say this all the time. I probably personally know probably 20 or 30 of the top advisors in this country. In this country, not in Florida, in the country. I know them personally. And I can tell you not one single one of them has ever made anyone rich. What they've done is they've taken people who had the time, discipline, process to accumulate money, whether they built a business or they built a widget or whatever they did. They then help those people make decisions to not ruin it, to make good tax decisions, to make ergonomic, probability-based decisions that keep them from blowing up the effort they just spent the last. It's hilarious to me. Somebody who's run a company for 40 years or longer comes in, they've saved, they've been a diligent saver, they've been responsible with their expenses, they haven't lived a lavish lifestyle, and they've accumulated $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, whatever the number is, and they come in and they say, can we earn 40% a year? So everything they just spent a lifetime doing, discipline, process, survivability, they throw right out the window the second they walk into an advisor's office. It's ludicrous. You just did all these things through discipline. and common sense and good process, and now you want to play the lottery with the money you accumulated. Like
and then they look at you and go, no, I don't want to play the lottery.
I want
you to play the lottery so I can hate you and not myself if this thing loses.
And why? What is the utility of that? There is no utility to that.
That's such an insight on your gig.
So, the hilarity is that they will go to 4 or 5 advisors who tell them what they should be told, what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, and they'll give the money to the one that says he's going to earn them 15% a year.
Yeah, the guy's rubbing his hands going, all I hit is bangers.
Dude.
All I hit is dingers.
You think this $3,000 suit just happened?
Smell me. What do you smell?
Do you see the 911 in the parking lot?
Liquid gold.
They give it to that guy.
I melted down platinum and I spritz it on the nape of my neck. Give me your money.
Hadn't thought about that. Yeah. So the summary of that dissertation is that people want they want to be told a story, a fantasy that makes them feel good, but what they really need is someone to hold their hand, make sure that they're successful, make sure that their probabilities are understood and what the potential outcomes are, and none of the outcomes should be catastrophic failure.
I always hear and see invest for the long term. Invest for the long term. And you know what? I agree.
All right, good.
But there has to be a time limit on that, right? You can't be like, what?
When you're 150, you can pull the money out.
Yeah, once you are Abraham,
yes.
You can take the money out. But that is, hopefully that's not too dumb of a question, but there has to be a time to someone's time where that is a bad advice, where that's just bad advice.
I agree.
And when is that?
Well, there's 2 sides to that. The first thing I would say is yes. Again, Nick and I were having, ironically or coincidentally, we were having this conversation before you came in this morning. We were talking about the utility of money for people who are retired, who are still in that saving hunker down mentality, and it's hard for me. I'm 61 now, and I'm starting to have conversations. I'm starting to arm wrestle clients who won't spend their money because they still have that accumulation mindset. And you got to remember, people in their 70s now, they're the children of the Depression era. Their parents were Depression era babies. So that mentality was passed down that you never have enough, you never know. And it's fair. I just read the book 1929, and it is something to think about. But they have that mentality that even at 65 or 68 or 73, they're still like, I just don't quite have enough, and I don't want to quite spend the money because I don't know what's going to happen. But at some point, you have to say enough is enough. And you have to say, I'm going to enjoy this money. Because let's face it, in your 80s, and there are some exceptions, but not a lot. I've been doing this a long time. There are very few people in their 80s that are whitewater rafting or hiking the Appalachian Trail or getting in and out of a Zodiac like I did in Antarctica a few months ago.
That's wild. And I am 36 and I would not do that.
Yeah. So you're not doing those amazing things you've worked your whole life to do. So I would say the utility of increasing your wealth beyond the age of maybe your mid to late 60s, I don't know that there is much, unless you're just trying to pass along money to children or grandchildren, which I'm not convinced is a great idea to begin with. So
really?
No, we can talk about that in a second. So I think that the utility of money,
screw them kids.
Yeah, that's right. The utility of money starts to diminish over time as you age, because if you had $100 to spend on something at 60, you could do a lot of cool stuff. If you have $100 to spend on something at 85, the list is, you're getting fiber for your diet or something, right?
Yeah, Activia.
Yeah, exactly.
Pallets of Activia.
Exactly. So understanding that and making, is it 65? Is it 68? Is it 70? I don't know, but I do know it's not 85. So again, there's a point where that time horizon needs to stop. Now, what I will say on the other side of that is a lot of times somebody will retire at 65 and say to me, or let's say they're 63 and they say, Scott, I'm going to retire in 2 years, so I don't want to take any more risk. That's also wrong. What's wrong about that is your time horizon isn't till you retire. It's till you're dead, right? So we know you can live 20, 25 years in retirement these days. So for you to put all your money in a savings account and get your ass whooped by inflation is probably not a great idea either. So you want to find that happy medium between the utility of your money, between, say, ages, retirement age, and maybe all the way up to 80. But you also don't want to take so little risk or have so little of risk assets in your portfolio that you're getting a butt whooping 10 years from now from inflation. Your time horizon is till you're dead. Your time horizon is not to age 65. So I think there's an intersection there between those two concepts that everybody needs to consider when they're doing the planning.
Man, this has been one of my favorite episodes.
Me too.
This wasn't just black and white numbers or just simple recommendations. This was talking about people's meaning, people's existence, people figuring out, and also respecting the question of what do you want, and reminding people that it's okay to try. And if you heard Scott talking about the people who can't spend their money when they save it, and you may have heard that in eye rolls thinking like, well, I'm on the opposite of that.
Sure.
Well, strive to be more like that person who does have a hard time spending their money if you aren't familiar with what that may feel like. It's okay to try to do what's best for future you. I think that's the one big takeaway from this episode. And respecting what you want. And it's okay to define that. You define that.
Social media doesn't define it. Your friends don't define it. And it's all contextual, right? Again, I have clients who probably spend 30, 40, 50,000 a year in retirement are some of the happiest people I know in the world. And I have clients who spend $500,000 a year that are miserable as the day is long. So again, understand what makes you happy. Understand really what do I like to like. For me, again, I used the party thing. I used to think I liked parties until I turned about 40 and I was like, I looked at my wife, I'm like, I hate parties.
And I think the money version of that is I used to think that I needed $1 million. Right. And then I found out that actually $125,000 from this point on is just exactly what I need.
Yeah, and again, everybody's different. I shouldn't tell you, like, you know, I have friends who love, like I made fun of Rolexes, but the reality is I have friends who legitimately, they enjoy watches. They enjoy collecting them. It's fun for them. They know everything about them, where they came from, what the serial numbers are. That's a Daytona.
I'm one of them. I just can't afford that.
Right. We're not in that ballpark yet. But Daytona's $35,000, you know, so... But and then some people who
that's more than Daytona, by the way.
The whole city, yeah. So and then the same is true of cars, right? You have some people who drive around in a $100,000 car. They couldn't tell you where the trunk is, right? And then you have some people who know everything about the car. They love the car. They love the engine. They know the year it was made. They know which factory it came. You know, again, everything's contextual. What do you enjoy? What do you need? But letting other people define that, I think, is the biggest mistake people make. And the reason other people are able to define that is because you let them, because you haven't defined it for yourself. You haven't sat down and said, honey, or you said to your significant other or to somebody you trust and value their opinion, you know, this is what I like to raft. I like to go down the whitewater. I'd like to do it in Colorado. I'd like to do it in Utah. I have buddies who are motorcycle guys. I was a motorcycle guy up until a few years ago. Is, you know, that for them, they might want to spend $2,000 every month traveling on their motorcycle somewhere. Again, you don't know that until you've defined it for yourself. And I'm telling you, if you don't define it for yourself, social media and your peer group's going to define it for you, which is going to make you miserable two ways. One, you won't have the money to do it. And two, you'll be doing something that somebody else defined for you.
And it seems like the goalpost will just keep on moving because there's going to be somebody out there telling you what you should be feeling.
Right.
And Scott, I absolutely love this conversation, but that is the end of our episode.
Wow.
I know. It goes by so fast.
It does.
And man, if you are listening to this right now and if you were any bit confused, let me double down on this. This is one of our most important episodes.
I agree.
Hit rewind. Go back to the first minute. And Scott, I know I'm ready to... I feel galvanized to go ahead and to self-respect and find out what I want. This has been such an amazing episode. You know, before people were listening to this, that was before math.
Yes.
And now here we are at the end of Aftermath. Thank you guys so much for listening. My name's Ross. That's Scott. This has been Aftermath, and one of my favorite episodes that I don't think I will be forgetting anytime soon. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Peace.